The man seemed to hear a noise not far away. When he turned his head, he saw a bloody handprint on the wall. The man even compared it to the others. But he only thought it was someone's prank. But suddenly there was a noise from across the wall. The man continued to look. He saw a woman eating a large sausage. Jack was dumbfounded. He said to himself that this was a joke. But the next moment, the woman suddenly looked up at him and let out an ear-splitting scream. The sight scared Jack completely. The woman picks up her axe and walks towards him. The man was terrified and told her to back off. But the woman kept dragging the axe forward. Only then did Jack regain his composure and run. But on the other side, Jack's brothers had also come across a strange man. Just as they thought he was drunk. They thought they were drunk when they tried to check on him. A man who looked like a soldier jumped on him and proceeded to beat him up. The men rushed forward to help. The man was about to draw his knife when they stopped him. No matter how much the man tried to explain, they knocked him out with a few punches. But at that moment, the woman who had been jumped picked up the dagger. She walked towards Tom like a corpse. She didn't give him time to escape. She quickly stabbed him through the palm of his hand, unaware that the brothers were still beating the man. But they saw the woman coming towards them. The men were in a state of shock and confusion. It was a close call. Luckily, Jack arrived just in time. The woman was knocked to the ground. The group took a closer look. They realized she was a female zombie. The men were scared and backed up. At the same time, more and more zombies were coming. Strangely enough, they were all enchanting women. They didn't think too much about it. They took the man who had been beaten and ran. Soon after they arrived at a hidden house. For the time being, they escaped death. When the beaten man woke up, they started discussing how to get out of here. Jack thought about the bus he had come on. But on second thought, the driver was a woman. Could she have been infected too? But there was no other way out. So they decided to venture out and check the situation. And so they did. They sent Tom out to find out what was going on. And as soon as they got near the bus, he put out his bleeding hand to test it out. As it turned out, they were all excited by the sight of blood. Tom fought back his fear, using his bleeding hand to lure the female driver off the bus. The female driver was soon lured off the bus by Tom. The others rushed onto the bus. But Soldier Alan had just started the bus. The zombie passengers on the bus are waking up. They opened their mouths wide and tried to bite them. They were so frightened that they got off the bus and ran for their lives. But Mike, the short-legged one, was still surrounded by the zombies. In the panic, he fell over. As he watched his friends escape, he was almost cut in half with an axe. Luckily, he survived. Mike climbs up on the sign and hides. On the other hand, the group ran all the way to the town. Just as the women were out for a walk in the dark, walkers of all shapes and sizes flocked together. This is an insightful walker. Here's a power drill walker. And this billboard walker. Yet several of them are unarmed. Suddenly Kenny gets tangled up in the doctor. Mike sees this and throws a baseball. The baseball hits the woman right in the head, temporarily knocking her back. Then it hits the billboard walker, and finally it bounces off the face of the seeker. This made her furious. She turns on her partner. A few of them watched in amusement, while the zombies fought with each other. When they had recovered, they ran away quietly. Kenny and the others took refuge in the toy shop, but as they looked for a weapon to defend themselves, suddenly they remembered that they had forgotten to lock the door. So they went to check, but they were blocked by seer walkers. They were about to break through. Kenny suddenly had a plan. First, he grabbed the remote control car. Then he sprinkled gasoline on the zombies' hands. Finally, he set it on fire and successfully repelled the army of zombies. On the other hand, Jack and the others panicked and hid in the clothing shop, and accidentally slipped on the ink on the floor. The head of a zombie is still in front of them, and that's when a large zombie suddenly appeared in the dressing room. But Alan was there just in time. He shot her dead. Jack escapes death. But how did the two separated groups communicate? The smart Kenny looked at the walkie-talkie and the remote control car. He took the radio to the clothing shop in the remote control car. That's how they made contact. But Tom, who was on the run outside, he's being clubbed by walkers. He was being beaten with a stick by a zombie. He's being beaten with a stick. He kicks the football away and manages to fight off his grandmother zombie. He then hid in a house. But just as he was rejoicing that he had survived, suddenly he is knocked unconscious by the zombie behind him. Notice the man is having dinner with the zombie. He can't hide his joy at this moment. Watching the man eat the human cake, the man can't help but ask the zombie to open the rope for him, so that they can have fun together. The zombie seemed to understand, so she stood up with great joy. She slowly crawls towards the man. Then she opens her mouth wide and hisses. And then she pulls out her chainsaw. The man thought he was being untied. Instead, the zombie was teasing him. The man was instantly furious. So much so that the zombie's hands shook with fear, and inadvertently cut the rope. The man took the opportunity to grab the chainsaw. He kills the female with the chainsaw. Shortly afterwards he managed to meet up with his friend. They discuss how to get out of here. Alan finds a mysterious remote control. Kenny also turns on the power to the device. A woman suddenly appears on the screen. They see that it is the mayor of the town on the poster. But before they can say a few words, the computer suddenly breaks down. Ellen saw that the matter had come to an end. So he told the truth. It turns out that the mayoress, in order to get Raw elected, so she developed an unknown liquid to control humans. When people inadvertently took it, when the mayor pressed a remote control, she was able to control the human brain. But something went wrong. The women of the town were infected with a mysterious virus. And that's when the soldier suddenly vomited blood from his mouth. On closer inspection, he was attacked from behind. An old zombie attacked him from behind. The men were confronted by the kindly old zombie. They didn't know what to do. At the last minute Kenny grabbed his bat and knocked him out. He then rushed to the bathroom to clean up. Jerry, who had to pee, followed him. But the female zombie is choking Kenny. Jerry is stunned and frozen in place. The female then stabs Kenny with her sword. Jerry saw this and ran. The zombie is in pursuit. To avenge his friend's death, he grabbed the zombie in his arms. Jack grabbed his sword and stabbed him. After a brief moment of mourning for their friend, as soon as they left the house, they were chased by the zombies again. They had no choice but to run to the attic. Jackson's blocked the door. The rest of the group fled through the skylight. But as soon as Jack got up there, Jack was dragged across the room by a walker. The group was forced to split up. When they saw this, they had to put a ladder up between the two buildings, and climbed over one by one. But suddenly a zombie rushes towards them. The man felt bad and told his friends to follow him. As soon as he climbed up the ladder, he was dragged down by the zombie that came behind him. They had no time to save each other. They had to run towards the bus. But this guy was out of luck. A zombie suddenly attacked him from behind. The female bites the man. And so they drove the bus out of town. They ran through the fence. And they knocked the walkers right over. And finally they got out of there. But as they walked on, the driver suddenly slammed on the brakes. But Jackson didn't die. He used the walkie-talkie to tell his brothers. He's just buried in a pile of dead people. Upon hearing this, the men immediately turn around and go back to save their brothers. Jackson also accidentally finds the mysterious remote control. He even found the remote signal switch. Soon after, the brothers returned to the town. They grabbed their weapons and prepared to fight the zombie hordes. Just as they're about to go to war, they find the zombies are dead and motionless. That's when Jackson came out. It turns out he'd pressed the pause button on the remote control. He snatched it up with the intention of trying it out. The effect is quite obvious. One on, one off. The zombies were being held in place. When he had enough, he threw it away for his friend to keep. Instead, he broke it. This is the end. A few people see this and shove Jackson into the shopping cart, and they run for their lives. This is the end of the film. See you next time.